everybody, Sean here from S&P Designs, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to build the balaclava with the half shirt. So let's just jump right in. Let's take a look at our patterns first. I've got them all printed and cut out and assembled, and I've already cut all the pieces out too, so we can just kind of get going pretty quickly here. You'll also notice there's a few different options with this one of them being that there are two different versions of the top, one that's a zipper and one that's not. So for this one, I'm going to be building up this version in a bullet nylon, which is a kind of a textured stretch material. It's a 4-way stretch, and it's in blue, so I thought it would be easy for you to see everything that's going on. So yeah, let's take a look at all the different pieces that we got going. The main option on the side of the head is that you can do like an open cutout for the ear, or you can do a solid version. There is also this dart on the side of the neck that can be used to size it if you need to. It's totally optional. You can do it or not, depending on how it fits. Also, the front of this one should be cut on the fold. So that half shirt thing is going to be one solid piece that's going to be right on the fold of the fabric. Another thing to notice is that if you're using stretch that's not 4-way, you have notations on each of the pattern pieces which way the stretch should go. So if you're using 2-way or something that's not as stretchy, you can tell which way to align your pattern pieces. So that's all of our pieces set up, and let's get going. So the first thing we're going to do is put the darts into the side, and you can see I've made like notches, and I've made a little dot here that shows me where my dart's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is just line up those little notches on the bottom edge, and then I'm going to sew that dart in. So there's our first dart. Now we'll do the other side the same way. And now that we've got both of them done, it's time to put the top on. So I've got the marks made on both the top and the side pieces for the front and the lower back. So what we're going to do is just match up those marks. And we're going to ease this side piece in. And I like to go with the curved piece on the top because I think it's easier to ease that piece in. So lining up the marks, I'm just going to start with that front piece, making sure that my marks are matched up. I'm just going to ease the top into that side, and you can use pins or little clips or anything that you find helpful with the stretch fabric. I can just kind of mold it with my fingers. Also, when working with stretch fabric like this, it's handy if you pull it back a little bit so that the fabric stretches while it's stitching, because then it'll keep your stitches from popping. That the fabric has a little bit of extra stretch. So there we've got the one side put in. And at this point, you might want to serge these off, to give it a little bit of extra protection. But you can see that if you stretch while you're stitching, your seams have some stretch to them, so they're not going to just like instantly pop. So now we're going to do the other side. And again, I'm going to start from the bottom on this side, matching up that bottom edge, and keeping that notch there. Just going to stitch that whole seam. Take it slow, take it easy, and just mold that fabric together. The good thing about stretch fabrics is they're pretty forgiving, so if you're not great at easing, this is a good way to kind of hone your skills. Now we're going to put that front piece on that goes right under the chin. So we're just going to match that up to the face edge and the bottom edge. And I know, sorry, it's kind of hard to see from this side of the sewing machine, but you're just going to line up those edges and just stitch at your half-inch seam allowance all the way down. And then do the other side. All right, and so that's the head put together. And so there's the main part of the non-zipper version of the balaclava assembled. Now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off this face edge. So I've got a 2-inch strip here cut just to bind off that edge. This is how I like to finish my edges. Of course, you could, you know, do a rolled hem, or you could serge it and turn it under and hem it, or, you know, whatever you want to do. But this is just the way I like to do it. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So I'm going to take my piece of edging material, and I usually start like at the bottom, the center bottom right under the chin, and I'm going to line it up with the edge of my straight stitch foot right on the edge of the fabric. And again, while stretching the fabric slightly so that, you know, the seams have got some flexibility, I'm just going to stitch that all the way around. Now at this point, I am right sides together on the right side of the fabric. So I'm sewing the binding strip to the front, the face side of the balaclava, and then I'm going to turn it to the back. So now I've got all the way around it, and I'm going to trim off the end. You want to make sure that you overlap them at the bottom so that you've got some overlap. And if you've got any like little areas that need to be trimmed, you can do that. Any little seam allowances that need to come off. So you've got that kind of even 1/4 inch all the way around. Now what we're going to do is go from the same spot. You can see the binding strips are overlapped a little bit. Going to roll them to the back, try to get them nice and tight. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and do what's called stitching in the ditch. So what you want to do is you want to stitch it right up against the seam line. If you want to have a tiny little bit of a top stitch, you can always do an edge stitch on top of the binding. It's up to you, just depending on the finish you want. So here you can see I'm just trying to stitch right up against my previous sewing line. And I'm stitching this one, this build thread in a contrasting thread, so you can kind of see where the stitching is, as opposed to the fabric. And yeah, you want to make sure that you kind of keep that binding at that even 1/4 inch. If you need to reach behind and kind of finagle it a little bit, again, you can use pins, or you can use tiny clips and take them off as you go around. Just make sure you keep it nice and even and tight. And also remember to stretch the fabric a little bit as you're sewing it, so that your stitching doesn't pop out when you're taking it on and off. Work your way all the way around that face edge. And then when you're finished, just go back inside and very carefully, don't cut through your stitching or you'll have to go back and redo it. Just very carefully trim out that excess material. I find it's easier to cut my binding strips a little bit wider than I need, and that way I've got excess, to work with when I'm putting it together. And so there is your nice, clean, finished face edge. So now we're going to sew the half shirt together. So I've got my piece here ready to go, and what we're going to do is we're going to do this center back seam first. So again, just stretching that fabric out a little bit while we're sewing it, and finish off this center back. Now we're going to do the shoulder seams. So at this point, what you want to do is just figure out how you want to finish off these edges around the armholes and the bottom. I like to just serge them because it doesn't add bulk and it's stretchy and it just makes it like very slim and easy to use. However, you can feel free to do it however you like. If you wanted to roll it over and do a rolled hem or serge it and turn it under and hem it, that's fine too. But I think serging is good because you're not going to really see those edges anyway. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to attach the head. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark the center fronts and the center backs. And we're just going to match up the center front of the hood and the center front of the half shirt and put those together. So I've got them lined up here. And remember, for the headpiece, you're matching up the center front, not the seam. And then just start stitching that down. And again, here it's really important to make sure that you are stretching that fabric. And also, the shoulder seam should match up with the dart at the side of the neck. So be sure you stretch that while you're sewing it so that you don't pop that neck seam. And once again, serging, all of these seams can also help to strengthen them. But just for time on this demo, I didn't serge them, I just stitched them together. So just stretch those out, go all the way around. And then when you get it done, there is your complete full one-piece balaclava. So that is our first version done. Now we'll do some variant options. So let's do the ear cutout version. So you can see I've got my pieces cut out. I've already cut the ear piece out. And the first thing we need to do, like we did before, was go ahead and do those darts down the neck. So I've got everything marked where it goes. So I'm just going to stitch this dart in here. And there's the dart sewn in. And what you're going to notice is there's going to be a little bit of a part in the ear, about 1/8 of an inch or so, that's going to be on there to give it the shape. Now what we want to do is finish off this earpiece. So what I like to do is just take like kind of a square of fabric that's, you know, larger than the hole, and, you know, kind of lay it down, figure out how big it needs to be, center it on there, and then I'm going to lay them front sides or right sides together and just smooth it out. And then, kind of like I was going to do with the binding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along at that 1/4 inch. I'm going to stretch this out, and I'm going to sew this entire piece down. And I like using a solid piece of fabric to do these kinds of things rather than, you know, cutting the hole in the binding piece, because it just makes it easier to sew around. It kind of stabilizes it. It's not quite so fussy. Then once you've got it sewn down all the way around, trim off your threads, then you can go in and cut out that middle piece. So just go in and carefully cut that out. And for these kind of round things, I like to cut them to about like a scant, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Just so you don't get a lot of bulk and like strange pulling when you turn it back inside. There. So now what you're going to do is you're going to just take that material, turn it to the back, and unlike binding, we're going to turn it completely back and then just give it a top stitch around the sewn edge. And this is going to make a nice round ear hole. Now you could use a straight strip of binding material to finish off this edge if you wanted to and do it like the face opening. But I think that doing it this way, especially for smaller, tighter curves, it makes it lay a little bit more smooth and a little bit more flat. You don't get, you know, all the twisting, and it's a little bit easier to manage. Fold that under, give it a nice top stitch. You do 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, whatever you want to do. And there's the ear hole. And then once you're done, you just go in and trim that excess fabric. Trim it up very close to your stitch line. Again, being careful not to cut through your stitch line, otherwise you'll have to go back through and fix that so that all the stitching doesn't come out. And there's your ear hole. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do each side separately because there's going to be a zipper in the back. So what we want to do is go ahead and take our side that's done, and put that top piece on. And this is going to be pretty much the same thing that we did for the piece that was solid. We're just going to do each side. So we're going to match up the front at the notch over the forehead. And just like before, matching up the notches, easing the curve in around the top of the head, stretching the fabric while we stitch, still very important. Again, use pins, use little clips if they help you, whatever you're comfortable with. And just sew that seam all the way around. And there's your one side done. Now you're just going to do exactly the same thing with the other side. And now we're going to do the front piece under the chin. Just like we did for the other one. Just line them up. And stitch that piece in on both sides. And there's your headpiece together. Now what we want to do is we want to go from the top and we want to stitch up just a little bit from that center front. We're just going to sew like, I don't know, 2 to 3 inches, like whatever you're comfortable with. All we're doing is we're just stitching a little bit of that top center front part so that we can go ahead and finish off the edge of the face. You could wait to finish the edge of the face until you're done, but for me, I think it's easier to do it at this point, so that's how I do it. And just like before, I'm just going to go along, take my binding strip, line it up to the edge, stitch it down while stretching the fabric, then turn it under, stitch in the ditch to finish it. I like finishing edges as I go because I think it's easier when you can lay things flat rather than putting something completely together and then trying to finish it. It just feels more fiddly. So now we're gonna do the body, which is a little bit different. So for the shirt on this one, we're actually gonna sew the shoulder seams first. Because since we're putting a zipper in the back, we're going to put the head in and then do the center back. So go ahead and do the shoulder seams. Now your shirt's together. Now you can just finish off the edges however you want. Here I've serged them really quickly off camera, and you can see you can really do whatever you want to with it. So at this point, what we're going to want to do is put the head together. So to attach the head, we're going to match up the center back, and we're going to stitch the head part onto the shirt part, going from center back to center back, matching up the side, shoulder seam to the dart, and the center front of the head to the center front of the half shirt. Again, stitching with stretch all the way around. And now we've got the head attached. So now what we're going to do is mark where we want for the zipper to start. So I've kind of just decided for me where I want the zipper to go. And now what I have to do is go back and finish the seam from where I stitched earlier to finish the face back to where I want the zipper to be. So basically what I'm doing right here is I'm just finishing off that top center seam and getting it ready to put the zipper in. Now, I'm using a 22-inch black invisible zipper for this demo. You can use whatever kind of zipper you want. But I like to use these. And what you want to do is make sure that your zipper is about 2 to 3 inches longer than you actually need it to be. So to start with the invisible zipper, unzip it all the way to the top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my zipper foot. I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm going to stitch up one side. Now at this point, I'm not rolling the teeth back. I'm just trying to lay down kind of an establishing stitch, just to make sure the zipper's in the right place. What I'm also doing is stretching the fabric just ever so slightly so that when the garment is worn, it can flex a little bit, because the zipper obviously doesn't stretch. At the top of the zipper, I want to end my stitch right at my seam line. And then I'm going to go back up the same side of the zipper, and this is where I'm going to turn the teeth back so that I can get that nice hidden zipper roll. Now with the zipper zipped, I'm going to do the other side and make sure that everything's lined up. The neck seam, the bottom edges, all of that good stuff. Now what I need to do is unzip the whole zipper all the way back, pushing the pull through and pulling it up. That's why the zipper needs to be longer than you need it. And now what you can do is go in on that other side, and you can sew that seam line in, starting from where everything joins and rolling the teeth up to get that nice invisible zipper finish. Now, from underneath, grab the pull it all the way down, and that finishes off the top of your zipper. And here we are, the finished balaclava in both styles. Check out the site for more, Be sure and visit the shop, and I'll see you next time.